The girl in the glass cage the room was cold and quiet. White lights hummed softly above, casting a glow on the smooth metal floor. In the center of the room stood a large glass cage. Inside the cage sat a girl. She didn't move, didn't speak, and didn't cry. She just stared at the wall with empty eyes. Her arms were thin, her skin pale with a soft shimmer. Her hair was silver like moonlight, and her eyes were a strange mix of green and gold. To the scientists who watched her, she was not a person. She was a subject, an experiment, an alien outside the cage. 3 alien researchers stood, writing notes on glowing tablets. Their blue skin and long fingers tapped quickly as they observed her. She hasn't spoken in 302 days. One of them said, "No reaction to tests," said another. "She shows no signs of aggression." The third added, "They stared at her like..." She was a puzzle they could not solve, but the girl didn't look at them. She kept staring at the wall, not blinking, not breathing deeply, just waiting. For what? No one knew. Then, the door at the back of the room hissed open. A human walked in. His name was Daniel Reyes, a young researcher, recently assigned to the Intergalactic Species Lab. He was tall, with messy brown hair and tired eyes. This was his first day in Sector 9, the most secure part of the lab. The moment he entered, he stopped. He saw her, the girl in the glass cage, and she looked back at him. Their eyes locked. Daniel felt something strange, like a pull. Her eyes weren't empty like the reports said. They were full of pain, deep, old pain. She blinked once, slowly, as if waking from a long dream. "Who is she?" Daniel asked. Stepping closer to the glass, the head alien researcher turned. "We call her Subject Zeta 7. Is she dangerous?" Daniel asked. "No," the alien said, "but she is strange. She was found near the ruins of an old human outpost on planet E47. Another added, "She hasn't spoken a word since she arrived." Daniel moved closer, his face just inches from the glass. The girl tilted her head slightly. He noticed her hands small, trembling, but gentle-looking. She didn't seem like a threat. She seemed lost. "Has anyone tried to talk to her?" Daniel asked. "She doesn't respond," came the cold reply. Daniel didn't like how they talked about her, like she was just a machine that wasn't working right. "May I observe her for a while?" he asked. The researchers shrugged. "As you wish. Just don't waste your time." They left him alone with her. Daniel sat on a bench a few feet from the cage. He opened his notebook, but he didn't write. He just watched her. And she watched him. Minutes passed in silence. Daniel leaned forward and spoke softly. "My name is Daniel," he said. The girl didn't move. "I'm here to learn about you," he continued. Still no response. He tried again the next day, and the next. Each time he greeted her, talked to her, told her simple things. What the weather was on Earth, what food he liked, even jokes. She never laughed, but she listened. He could tell. Her eyes followed his lips as he spoke. She blinked when he said something new. She tilted her head when he asked a question. Something was there, not madness, not silence. Something waiting on the 5th day. Daniel brought a small device with him. He played soft music through Eton Old Earth melody played on piano. The girl's eyes widened. She turned her head fully toward him for the first time. Daniel smiled. "You like that?" She didn't speak, but her fingers twitched gently in rhythm with the music for the first time. She moved on her own. Daniel returned every day after that. Every time he brought new music, small objects to show her an earth flower in a glass case, a feather, a glowing orb. She watched everything with quiet wonder. The other researchers laughed at him behind his back. "Still playing with your pet?" One sneered, but Daniel didn't care. He knew there was something special about her, something the others refused to see. Late one evening, after most staff had gone, Daniel sat alone in front of her cage. The lights were dimmed, The lab was quiet. Daniel closed his notebook and said softly, "You don't have to be afraid." Then something happened. The girl leaned forward, closer to the glass, her lips parted, her voice dry and cracked like old paper. She whispered, just loud enough to hear, "Help." Me, Daniel's heart stopped. He stared at her. "Why died? You can speak," he said. The girl looked straight into his eyes. Tears shimmered in hers. "They're coming," she whispered. Then she leaned back into the shadows of the cage and went silent again. The silent scream Daniel couldn't sleep that night. The girl's words echoed in his mind again and again. "Help me," she had whispered. Just 2 words, but they changed everything. She wasn't a mute. She wasn't an empty shell. She was alive, afraid, and trying to speak. But what did she mean? They're coming. Who was coming, and why was no one else worried? The next morning, Daniel walked into Sector 9 earlier than usual. The alien researchers were surprised to see him. "You're early," one said. "Didn't sleep," Daniel replied, walking straight to the glass cage. The girl was already sitting up, eyes fixed on him as if she'd been waiting. Her face was calm, but her eyes were different today. They held something deeper fear. Daniel sat down, leaned forward, and whispered, "Can you talk to me again?" She didn't answer, but her eyes didn't leave his. "I need to understand," he said. "What are you afraid of?" The girl slowly looked up at the blinking red light above her cage, the security camera. Then she lowered her head and shut her eyes. Daniel understood. She couldn't speak while being watched. That day, he did something dangerous. He used his clearance card to pause the camera feed for just 10 seconds. The screen blinked, and in that small window of time, she moved. She pointed to the ground, then drew a small symbol with her finger. Daniel leaned closer, memorizing it, a spiral with 3 dots. "What is that?" he whispered. But the camera feed turned back on, and the girl went still again. Later, Daniel returned to his room and searched through old human records. He found the symbol buried in a forgotten file, Project Eco-Spiral. It was linked to an abandoned human experiment during the first years of space colonization, a project meant to create advanced beings using alien DNA. The subjects disappeared, and the files were sealed. His blood ran cold. Was she one of them, a result of a human experiment gone wrong? Or something even more dangerous? The next day, Daniel entered the lab and saw something was off. 2 guards stood near the cage, weapons ready. The lead alien researcher looked tense. "What's going on?" Daniel asked. "She moved last night," the alien said. "We think she's becoming unstable." Daniel looked at the girl, who sat quietly in the same place. She hadn't moved at all, but her eyes were different again, narrowed, focused. "She's not unstable," Daniel said. "She's scared." "That's exactly the problem," the alien said. "Fear leads to action." The guards didn't lower their weapons. Daniel clenched his fists, but said nothing. That night, he returned again, alone. This time, he brought a tiny light pen and pressed it against the glass. He wrote 1 word. "Why?" the girl looked at it, then used her fingertip to write back from the inside. "Pain," she wrote. Then another word. "Truth." Then she touched her chest and finally pointed to him. "You." "Me?" Daniel stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" he whispered. She looked around, then mouthed something silently. No sound came. But Daniel read her lips carefully. They lied. The lights flickered, just for a second, then the alarms sounded. Daniel jumped to his feet. The cage glowed red automatic lockdown mode. From the hallway, footsteps thundered toward them. The girl stood up, eyes wide with panic. She placed both hands on the glass and mouthed something again. "Faster this time." Daniel stepped closer, watching her lips. "They are coming," she said again, "but not for me." The doors burst open, and security stormed in. "Step back from the subject," one of them ordered. Daniel raised his hands. She didn't do anything, but no one listened. The lights dimmed, and something deep in the building roared, metal scraping, machines powering up. Suddenly, the girl let out a scream, not loud, not angry, but deep and broken. It echoed through the glass, through the walls, through Daniel's chest. It wasn't just a scream. It was a memory. It was pain. And everyone in that room felt it. The guards froze. The lead researcher dropped his tablet. Daniel stared at her, stunned. That was no normal scream. It was something else. Something not human, not alien, but something in between. The sound faded, and the room went silent again. The girl collapsed to her knees, eyes dull and tired. Daniel rushed to the glass, hands pressed to it. He whispered, "What did they do to you?" But she didn't answer. Her eyes closed, and she fell into darkness once more. Secrets in the dark. The lab was never the same after her scream. No one talked about it, but everyone remembered how it felt. How it made their skin crawl and their hearts slow down. The alien researchers stopped getting close to the cage. They watched her from a distance now. They whispered things like unstable, dangerous, and must be contained. But Daniel knew better. That scream wasn't violence. It was a warning, a message hidden in pain. He just didn't know what it meant yet. Late at night, when the lab was empty, Daniel sat at his desk. A dim lamp flickered above him. He opened a secure file system restricted. Level 7 clearance only. He didn't have access. But he knew how to bypass the firewall. He had learned from a rogue coder back on Earth. Sometimes the coder told him, "Truth lives where no one is allowed to look." He typed the code slowly, carefully. After several failed attempts, the screen blinked. A hidden folder appeared. Project EcoSpiral. Daniel opened the files. There were videos, audio logs, and reports. One report stood out, marked with a red stamp, terminated. UNSAFE. Clicked on it. Subject name: EYLA, species status: unknown hybrid origin, human-engineered specimen, primary traits: adaptive intelligence, memory transference, vocal harmonics result. Project abandoned after subject escaped. Daniel's hand trembled slightly. She had a name, Allah. She wasn't a number or a subject. She was made by humans, created, tested, and then discarded. No wonder she screamed. They didn't find her, they made her. He clicked on a video file next. It showed Ayla much younger, sitting in a different cage, this time surrounded by humans in white lab coats. She was crying silently as a voice off-screen said, "You must control the frequency. Ayla, or the others, will suffer." Then the video showed other subjects, also children. Some human, some not, all in pain. The sound of her voice rose softly in the video. A hum that shook the walls. Machines short-circuited, lights exploded, and the video cut to black. Daniel leaned back in his chair, horrified. She wasn't a threat. She was a survivor, someone made to be a weapon who refused to become one. The next morning, Daniel returned to the lab. The lights felt too bright, the air too still. He noticed something right away. Her cage was darker. The glass had turned from clear to tinted. No one could see in or out. "Why is the glass shielded?" Daniel asked. "For safety," said one of the aliens coldly, "until she's transferred to the outer facility." "What facility?" "A moon base for dangerous specimens." Daniel's chest tightened. They're going to send her away, he thought. Hide her where no one will ever see her again. He had to act fast. He waited until the shift ended, then walked past the cage, pretending to check equipment. He placed a small receiver near the cage floor, too small to be noticed. It connected to his datapad, letting him send one-way messages directly into the cage. That night, from his room, he typed a message. "Your name is Allah. I know who you are." He pressed send. The next morning, Allah was sitting up in her cage again. Her eyes searched the glass, then settled on Daniel as he entered. She didn't smile, but she blinked once. Slowly, he knew she got the message. Later, he placed another one. "I saw the video. I'm sorry." Again, she blinked, and then placed her hand on the glass. It was the first time she made a move without fear. Daniel knew she was starting to trust him, but time was running out. The transfer was scheduled in 3 days. They were going to erase her. Bury the truth with her. Daniel needed help, and he knew just who to ask. That evening, he contacted a friend, an ex-military technician named Maya. She worked in off-grid tech support for rebels and whistleblowers. "You're messing with Black Level files," Maya warned him over a secure line. "She's not what they say," Daniel replied. "She's more than that." Maya leaned in close to the screen. "If she's what you say she is, they'll never let her go." Daniel nodded. "That's why we have to break her out." Maya paused, then said, "I'll help, but once we start, there's no turning." Back, Daniel looked toward the lab from his window. The stars above shimmered silently. Somewhere inside that building, Ayla sat alone again, but not for much longer. He memory code. The stars outside the space station never changed. They hung in the darkness like cold eyes, always watching, never blinking, inside. Everything was about to shift. Daniel paced his quarters. The lights dimmed to evening mode. He held his datapad tightly, reading Maya's message again and again. "We found something in her DNA code," she had written. "It's not just memory, it's a map." Daniel couldn't believe it. Ayla wasn't just carrying pain, she was carrying information, a living memory file built into her cells. Something humans had made long ago and then buried, and now it was waking up. He tapped his pad again. A secure message blinking on screen. "Meet at Dock C12 in 2 nights." Maya had written, "We'll get her out. But you better be sure, Daniel. They'll hunt you both." He was sure. He just wasn't ready. The next morning, Daniel walked into Sector 9 and froze. 2 military officers stood by Ayla's cage, their armor black and sharp like knives. The lead alien researcher stood nearby, nervously tapping his claws together. "She's being moved early," he told Daniel without looking at him. "Why?" Daniel asked, trying to stay calm. "No reason," the alien said. "Just orders from above." Daniel's stomach dropped. They knew. Somehow they knew she was more than a test subject. They were rushing to erase her before anyone else found out. He walked up to the cage, where Ayla sat quietly. She didn't move, but he saw it in her eyes. She knew too. Daniel placed his hand on the glass slowly, then whispered, "Tonight, be ready." Ayla blinked once. That was all the answer he needed. He spent the rest of the day setting up the escape. Maya had already hacked into the security logs, replacing files, redirecting cameras. "All we need is 30 seconds, she told him over the comm. 30 seconds and you're ghosts. But something still bothered him, the map inside. Ayla's DNA. That night, while the base lights dimmed, Daniel returned to his lab station and accessed a secure scanner. He had downloaded a small sample of Ayla's genetic code earlier, just enough for analysis. The machine hummed softly as it ran the data, then it stopped. The screen filled with strange lines, glowing symbols, and shifting patterns. Not just biology, not just data, but coordinates. They pointed to an old sector of space, long abandoned Sector Thatnine. It was labeled as uninhabitable in the charts, but the code called it something else. Origin point. Daniel leaned back slowly, chills on his arms. That's where she was made, and maybe, just maybe, that's where the others were. He didn't have time to think more. The escape had to happen now. He grabbed his gear and sprinted toward Dock C12. Maya was already waiting, dressed in black, her drone hovering behind her silently. "You cut it close," she said with a grin. Daniel smiled faintly. It's not a real plan unless it almost fails. They moved through the back corridors, dodging patrols, bypassing scanners. Finally, they reached the hallway outside Ayla's chamber. Daniel opened the secret audio channel linked to her cage. "It's time," he whispered. Inside the cage, Ayla opened her eyes. She stood slowly, her body calm, but her fingers twitching with tension. Maya tapped her device, and the locks on the cage hissed quietly. The glass walls shimmered, then vanished. Ayla stepped out for the first time in years. Daniel stared at her harder than he expected. Stronger than she looked, she didn't run, didn't cry. She just walked beside him, like she always knew this moment would come. They moved quickly through maintenance tunnels. Alarms hadn't triggered yet, but time was against them. Suddenly, the hallway lights turned red. A voice boomed. From the speakers, "Unauthorized breach detected. Lockdown in progress. Go." Maya shouted, sending her drone ahead to open the next gate as they ran. Daniel glanced back. Guards were already following, weapons drawn, boots pounding. He turned to Ayla. "Can you do it again?" She didn't answer, but closed her eyes. A soft hum filled the air. Not a scream this time, but a vibration. The walls around them shook, lights flickered, and the guards behind them fell to their knees, clutching their heads. Ayla's voice was like a wave, crashing silently through metal and bone. Daniel grabbed her hand. "Come on," they reached Dock C-12, where Maha's ship waited, small, fast, and unmarked. They jumped inside, just as the doors closed and the engines roared to life. As they lifted off, Daniel looked at Ayla, who sat quietly, watching the stars through the window. "We found something in your code," he said softly. "A place." She turned to him, her voice calm and clear for the first time. "I remember it," she said. "That's where they left the others." Daniel's eyes widened. "There are more like you." Allah nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "But they're sleeping." She looked out the window again. "And now, I'm going to wake them." The escape plan. The stars stretched like silver rivers beyond the ship's window. Ayla sat quietly in the corner, eyes half closed, lips barely moving. She was remembering. It's not dreaming, not sleeping, not sleeping. Daniel stood near the pilot's seat, staring at the navigation screen. Maya adjusted the flight course as the small ship glided through deep space. "Sector Thattening," Daniel said softly, pointing to the map. "That's where she says the others are." Maya raised an eyebrow. "And we trust her now?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked back at Ayla. She had saved their lives, used her voice to stop armed soldiers without touching them. That wasn't just power, it was choice. She had the chance to destroy them, Daniel said, but she didn't. Maya sighed and leaned back in her chair. "Then, I guess we're in this all the way." Outside, black space flickered with electric storms, abandoned satellites, and broken signals. They were entering the edges of forbidden space. Daniel walked to Ayla and gently sat beside her. "Do you know exactly where the others are?" he asked. Ayla didn't open her eyes, but she nodded. "They sleep in the vault," she said, voice soft like wind, "a lab deep under the ice, hidden by a false beacon." Maya turned around in her chair. "A false beacon?" Ayla nodded again. "It sends out a dead signal, like nothing's there, but it's not empty. It's a cage." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "How many are there?" 17, Ayla whispered. "Some older than me, some broken." Maya whistled. "And they've been down there all this time." Ayla opened her eyes now, golden and sharp. "Waiting." Daniel stood, full of quiet urgency. "Then we bring them back." Maya leaned forward and tapped her screen. "All right," she said. "I'm rerouting us to Thattening, but we can't go in loud. The beacon field might fry our systems if we enter wrong." Daniel nodded. "We go in slow and land by stealth. We'll need a plan to get into the vault and get them out." Ayla stood to now, slow and graceful like she was made of light and shadow. You won't need weapons, she said. You'll need memory. Maya looked confused. What does that mean? Alla raised her hand, and the lights in the ship flickered. Then, the ship's interface screen shifted, symbols dancing across it ones Maya had never seen. Daniel leaned in, stunned. She's linking with the ship. Ayla's voice grew distant, like it echoed from far away. My body remembers the code. My blood holds the map. I can guide us in. Maya stared at her, amazed. Okay, spooky voice lady, she said with a grin. You're the GPS now. As the ship approached the outer orbit of Thatanine, everything went quiet. No signals, no radio, no light, just cold silence. Maya slowed the ship to glide mode. Engines low, Ayla walked to the front window, her hand touching the glass. Beneath them was a dark, frozen planet, wrapped in clouds and covered in snow. And deep inside it, something hidden. Suddenly, Daniel's datapad lit up, blinking fast. A signal, a message. It was old over 20 years, but it had one word repeated again and again. Awake, Daniel's hands trembled as he showed it to Ayla. Is this from them? She nodded, slowly. They dream while they sleep, and some of them remember me. The ship landed in silence, covered by the shadows of jagged cliffs. Winds howled outside, strong and sharp. Daniel, Maya, and Ayla stepped out, wearing thermal suits and oxygen masks. But Ayla didn't shiver. She didn't seem to feel the cold at all. They climbed down a frozen path until they reached a massive wall of smooth black stone. No door, no handle, just ice. This is it, Ayla said. Touching the surface, her palm lit with soft gold energy, and the wall vibrated. A seam split down the center, and the stone opened like ancient jaws. Inside was a tunnel, dark and breathing like a living thing. Stay close, Ayla said. Daniel and Maya followed her into the vault, their lights flickering as they moved. Strange writing covered the wall's symbols, of warning, of power, of sorrow. Then they entered a round chamber, cold as death. 17 pods stood in a circle, glowing faintly blue. Inside each one lay someone different, some small, some tall, all still. Ayla walked up to one and placed her hand on it. A whisper escaped her lips. Brother, Daniel's voice shook. How do we wake them? Ayla turned to him. Eyes shining with memory, she placed both hands on the pod, and a golden light surged through it. The body inside stirred, eyes fluttering, mouth parting. He was waking up. One by one, Ayla moved from pod to pod, and a vault filled with soft sounds, heartbeats, gasps, whispers of names. Maya stood frozen, whispering, We're not rescuing them, we're rebuilding something. Daniel nodded, heart pounding. This isn't just escape anymore, he said. This is a return, and far above them, unnoticed for now, silent drones began to move. Someone had detected the breach, and they were coming. Rebellion protocol. The ice above the vault was no longer still. Hidden drones flew across the frozen sky, scanning every inch of the surface. They had found the ship, and they knew who was inside. Deep below, in the vault of Secta Thatanine, the silence had changed. It was now filled with slow breathing, soft footsteps, and awakening minds. 17 stasis pods stood open, one by one, inside. The lost creations of Project Ecospiral had returned to life. Some were children no longer grown inside the pods without aging. Others looked unchanged, locked in the bodies they were left in, but all of them shared one thing: golden eyes. Like Ayla, and a strange calm, Daniel watched them with awe and fear. What now? He asked. Turning to Ayla, she stood in the center of the room, arms out, the others forming a silent circle around her. They don't remember everything, she said. But they feel me. We were connected before we were separated. Maya's hand rested near her belt, where her blaster hung ready. Some of them don't look stable, she whispered. One of the awakened boy with silver veins across his skin was pacing like a restless wolf. Daniel looked at him and nodded. They're not soldiers. They were children, grown in fear, trained by pain. That's not their fault. Allah turned slowly, scanning the group. They need purpose, she said, and truth. Before anyone could reply, a red light blinked on Daniel's datapad. Maya checked her scanner at the same time. They're here, she said, jaw tight. A full sweep Team Elite class. Daniel stared at the ceiling, heart racing. They came too. Fast, someone tracked us the moment we landed. Allah stepped forward, calm and unshaken. Let them come, she said. We won't run. Maya raised her brow. I thought this was an escape. Ayla looked back with glowing eyes. No, she said softly. This is a return. Above the vault, the security team moved like shadows, silent, armored. Armed with stun rifles and suppression drones, they dropped down. Through the opened vault door, one by one. Their boots echoed through the tunnels like distant thunder. But when they reached the central chamber, they paused. The air was heavier, electric. They saw the open pods, the strange children with glowing eyes, and then they saw Allah. One officer raised his weapon. Subjects must surrender immediately, he said through a voice filter. Ayla took one step forward, the others behind her moving. In sync like they shared one breath. We are not subjects, she said, voice clear and ringing across the walls. We are the forgotten. We are memory. Before they could fire, something happened unexpected. Silent, powerful, the walls of the vault shimmered and every symbol etched into the stone lit up. Daniel backed away, eyes wide. What's happening? He asked. Ayla raised her hand toward the soldiers. Her palm glowed softly, not with anger, but with something ancient. The soldiers froze in place. Their weapons shaking in their hands, one by one, their suits began to glitch. The lights on their helmets flickered, systems failing. They can't think, Maya whispered, watching in awe. She's flooding their minds with memory. Allah took another step, and her voice rose. You built us to be tools, but we are echoes of all your sins, and we remember. One officer dropped to his knees, screaming through his helmet. The others turned and ran, terrified of what they couldn't understand. But one stayed, shaking, breathing heavily. He removed his helmet, revealing a human face, young, pale, and afraid. He looked at Ayla, tears forming in his eyes. I was born in the same lab, he said, voice shaking. They erased my records. Ayla stepped closer. Eyes soft now. You were one of us. He nodded. Falling to his knees, they told me I failed the test. I didn't fail, he whispered. I survived, Daniel. Knelt beside him, hand on his shoulder. You're not alone anymore. Behind them? The other Zayla's brothers and sisters gathered in silence. Some placed hands on the vault walls. Others began humming softly. The vault answered. A low hum filled the chamber, and then panels opened across the floor. Hidden under the stone was a machine, round, ancient, glowing. Daniel stared, speechless. What is that? Ayla stepped forward, placing both hands on it. It's the core, she said. The first memory archive. They stored our truths here, and now I will give it back to the world. Maya turned sharply, broadcast it. You mean? Ayla nodded, golden light swirling in her hands. Everything they hid. All the pain, all the lies. They'll hear it, they'll remember. Outside, in the deep of space, warning beacons began to light up. On nearby planets, signals started to buzz. The system was waking. Daniel stepped back and whispered, this isn't just rebellion. This is revolution. The awakening, the sky above Thitani turned red. Not from fire, not from battle, but from light. A signal had been sent, a memory, one so old and so painful that even the machines paused to feel it. Across nearby systems, screens blinked to life on. Their own ships stopped mid-flight, engines humming in silence. civilian stations, military bases, alien embassies, everywhere. They saw her face, Allah, and behind her, 17 others with golden eyes. She spoke only once. "We were made in your shadows, built to serve, born from fear, left to die. But we remember everything." The message ended. The signal kept repeating, echoing across the stars. On the surface of Thatton 9, inside the open vault, Daniel stood with wide eyes. "It's done," Maya whispered, stunned. "You sent it to the whole galaxy." Allah stepped back from the memory core, our skin dimming softly. "They'll come for us now," she said, all of them. The youngest of her kind, a girl no older than 10, walked up beside her and took her hand. "Let them come," the child whispered. Allah looked at Daniel. "You've seen what we are," she said. "Do you still believe in us?" Daniel stepped closer, no fear in his face. "I believe the galaxy needs to remember, and you gave it the truth." Maya checked her scanner and frowned. "Ships inbound," she said. "Lots of them. Not just one faction, human, alien, syndicates, even rogue pirates. They're all coming." Daniel looked at the others. The awakened. Some looked calm, some anxious, some full of power they hadn't yet learned to control. He turned to Isla. "You said we needed purpose," he said. "Maybe this is it." Ala nodded. "We are not weapons," she said. "But we will not be caged again." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the vault. The entrance above them exploded inward, and figures dropped through the smoke, heavily armed, armored, and fast. Maya raised her weapon, but Isla lifted her hand. "No." She said, "Let them speak first." The squad fanned out, then paused. A tall woman in command armor stepped forward, her face hard, her voice sharp. "I am Commander Relis of the Galactic Tribunal," she said. "You are transmitting an illegal signal across sovereign space." Daniel stepped forward quickly. "You need to see what was hidden." He said, "They didn't ask to be born. They were made, and then buried." Relis stared at him, then looked at Ayla. "I saw your message," she said slowly. "I saw the children in the pods and the project records we were never meant to read." Relis lowered her weapon. "You didn't start a war," she said. "You lit a fuse. But what happens next depends on how this ends." Alice stepped forward, calm and steady. "We want no war," she said. "We only want the right to exist." One of the other tribunal soldiers raised a hand slowly, removing his helmet. He was human young, eyes filled with confusion and memory. "I saw her in a dream," he said softly, pointing at Ayla, "before I was even assigned to this mission." Daniel turned sharply. "She's waking up memories," he said, "across systems, in people who carry echoes of the project. She's not just connected to the others, she's connected to all of us." The vault trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something rising, a presence, the memory core. Behind Allah pulsed once, then again, then lit up completely. A column of golden energy shot upward through the vault ceiling and into the sky. Everyone shielded their eyes in space above. The ships arriving stopped mid-maneuver. Scanning the beam, Maya gasped, staring at her display. "It's broadcasting a new frequency," she said. "Not just data commands." Daniel looked up in awe. "She's waking up the network, the old human tech that was left behind." Across distant planets, ruins blinked awake. Satellites powered on after decades of silence. Deep under oceans and buried inside moons, ancient human technology stirred again. They had been waiting for a signal one only Allah could give. Ayla turned to her brothers and sisters, her voice calm and full. "You were not born by mistake. You were made to be more than tools. Now is the time to choose. Will you hide, or will you rise, one by one?" They stepped forward. They placed their hands on the vault walls, and the light spread outward, not in anger, not in war, but in truth. Outside, ships began to land. Some with fear, some with hope, news spread faster than light. The forgotten children of Project EcoSpiral had returned, and the galaxy watched. In silence, Daniel stood beside Ayla and said softly, "They caged you like an animal. But now, they'll see who you really are." Ayla didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "Not a weapon," she whispered. "Not a ghost. I am memory, and memory cannot be erased."